Good morning. Today we're going to dive into the subject of finding ways in order to relieve the pain of those who may not be able to turn a wheel of life, as we find ourselves living in a economy whereby wages are not only going down, but they are stagnating and in certain cases regressing. Now, I know the government has introduced many what they call help schemes such as workfare in order to relieve the pain of many people who may find it difficult these days to deal with the problem of stagnating income, and in certain cases even incomes regressing. And to exacerbate the situation, you find that the rate of inflation recently has been declared at 5.7%. Now, in relative terms, this may not appear to be significant, but when you consider that if you put money in a fixed deposit, you're only getting perhaps a return of 3.5 to 4, then it doesn't take a genius to realize that there is a deficit. And when you compound that throughout a period of 10 or 20 years, then you will find that ordinary people are literally losing out. And the question right now is, how do you actually find a solution in order to relieve many of the problems that are created by the whole idea of globalization and what I refer to as ceaseless competition? Now, I'm not going to cultivate the bad habit of calling a spade anything but a spade. As far as I'm concerned, the whole idea of ceaseless competition, better, betterest, faster, cheaper, is essentially an idea that goes back to the survival of the fittest. The idea that if you are weak, then you don't have the right to live. The idea that only the strong will inherit the world. But we know that that is not true. But let us ask ourselves one very important question that has not really been asked before. If you really want to relieve the pain of those who may find it difficult to deal with an emerging challenge, whereby they find their money getting smaller and smaller and smaller, then I think it is important to look at what is on offer. Now, if you look at welfare in the context of Singapore, which is workfare and current schemes that are designed in order to help the poor, you find that it is bureaucratic. And bureaucracy by itself is something that, in my view, is offers to help, but it doesn't really help. Now, let me give you a very good example of this. About 2 years ago, I went to a polyclinic because I had an issue with my molars. And when I went there, I asked to see the dentist, and I was given an appointment of 1 year, 2 months. I'm not kidding, 1 year, 2 months. I'm not anonymous, you can see my face. If you want addresses, if you want telephone numbers, if you want accounts, this I can supply to you. Now, in this particular case, the reception did not say no to me. But what they did was they created conditions that was equivalent to saying no to me, perhaps even giving me no option at all. So as a consequence, I had to actually go to a private dentistry. And I think this is a very poignant illustration of how you can actually say that you have a system that serves the people, but at the same time you create so many roadblocks and you require them to jump through hoops, which in my view doesn't really provide conducive conditions whereby you can actually relieve many of their problems. And this is why I believe very strongly the most accessible and the most simple way in order to help poor people these days, in order to cut the pain in half perhaps, is to find a way for us to cut off certain items which are currently GST. Now, I want to be clear about this. GST is a concept that only applies in Singapore right across the board. Even if you go to countries like Britain, you find that children's clothing are exempted from GST. And in Sweden, you find that many other items, such as dealing with disabled families, caring for those who are old. Now, all these things, when it comes to the itemizations of items purchased, are rebatable. But in Singapore, no. In Singapore, it appears to be what the government expects you to do is take off time in order to queue up, see a bureaucrat, and the bureaucrat will ask you a series of questions, and somewhere along this rigmarole, you're supposed to get compensation or you're supposed to get a financial provision. Now, in my view, that is bullshit, because I'll be very honest with you. People who are poor do not have time to take a ticket, sit down for 2 hours, or for that matter, prepare their documentation in order to see a bureaucrat. They don't have it. When you consider that they work 12 hours a day, rotating shift, they don't have the same luxury as you, as me, whereby they have Saturdays and Sunday off. In certain cases, they only get 1 off day in 2 working weeks, and in certain cases, they don't even get any at all. So I think it's important to understand that when you create a system that requires somebody to take off time on their off day and to actually sit down in a bureaucracy, I don't think this is really a solution to solve many of their woes. In fact, you are creating conditions whereby you give people, especially the general public, the illusion that you're providing assistance. But in actuality, there is no means for them to benefit from all these provisions that are currently on offer. And so I think we should focus on just GST, and we should focus on identifying certain necessaries that should be exempted from the whole idea of GST. Now, what comes to mind is items like flour, milk powder, sugar, baby's clothes, and if I had my way, even books. And I think this is something that government needs to really look at on a serious basis. I don't think that the whole idea of arguing for the case of welfare at this present moment in Singapore is realistic. It is not realistic because when you look at the whole worldview of the PAP, they have through the years created this idea that welfare is evil. And this notion has, you could say, fossilized and calcified to the point whereby the amount of energy that you will take to turn these people to even consider this idea on a serious basis, it is impossible. It is really, really quite impossible. And I hope that when you listen to this, you will perhaps find a way in order to take this idea further, flesh it out into something that you can uniquely call your own. And as we celebrate this Christmas, I think it's not only important for us to spare a moment for those who are not as fortunate, but perhaps we should also consider that whatever that's happening to them right now could very well happen to you, your children, your loved ones, or even those who form the inner circle of your friends. And when you look at it in that context, I think that this is a problem that affects everybody. Thank you. And do have a Merry Christmas.